Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whatever time zone you happen to be in. I'm Donald Hutera, and I would like to welcome you to the final session of this month-long marathon of Taiwan Season 2020 Online Symposium Connecting with Taiwan. Let me just say at the very beginning that we have a special surprise event at the very end of this approximate 2-hour session. So do stick around, please, because I'm quite happy that it's happening, but I can't say anything more right now. The way this has worked this month is every Tuesday, I've had an informal conversation with one of the 4 choreographers whose work was meant to be seen all of August in Edinburgh at the 2 key fringe venues, Summer Hall and Dance Space. Those sessions were repeated on Thursdays, and indeed every session is archived on Cultural Taiwan UK and Taiwan Seasons YouTube channels for posterity. So I do recommend that you investigate those. On Wednesdays and Fridays, I have been hosting webinars, in 2-hour, 2-part webinars themed. The subjects have been venues and international exchange, disability arts, live art, and this week, indigenous arts in Taiwan and internationally. Those have been with experts in artistic practice, programming, presentation, and production. And so again, today is the grand finale, and our keynote speaker. Please join me on the virtual stage, Alice.
Hello, hi, Donald. Nice to see you again.
Very good to see you. I just need to remind our viewers that if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat box. Tell us who you are. Tell us anything. This is the final section, and so we can go a little happy, crazy, wild, and connect as much as possible, since it's our goodbye to the webinar for this month, to the symposium. Also, today is being supported by Wordly in terms of English translation. The sessions will be in English, but there is this Wordly translation available. So, Alice, what have you got planned today?
Well, today I have to say I have a big topic, which is curating indigeneity in Taiwan. So I have to say it's not easy to introduce so many informations in only 2 hours, but I will do my best. And then we're gonna have guest speakers, so I'm sure they can give us more ideas and aspects.
And you have 4 guest speakers, which I think is the most we might have had in any session so far. So it's a real bumper crop of smart, beautiful, wonderful people to be talking. And by the way, your session on Wednesday, if I didn't say this, it was really fascinating. So anybody who's here with us today and didn't see it, it is, as I said before, archived. So Alice, I think I need to get off stage and leave you with the spotlight. See you later.
Okay, see you later. Hello, everyone. Well, nice to see you again. I'm Alice. Today, as I said, it's a big topic, which is curating indigeneity in Taiwan. So before I begin, I want to first, again, acknowledge our indigenous peoples who have lived on this island for thousands of years and who are still here, fighting for their land rights and protecting our land with their traditional knowledges. So today, before I start, I want to first correct a wrong information I gave on Wednesday, which is the Formosan Aboriginal Song and Dance Group was in fact founded on April 1991, not 1994. So sorry for the confusion. Okay, so now, in order to give you more ideas and aspects about this topic, there will be 3 parts on this session. For the first part, I will give you a general information and history background about Taiwan indigenous art. Later, Dondon Hounwn, the head of our Pulima curatorial team, and artist Anchi, as well as Ashley Chang from Perth Institute of Contemporary Arts, will join me. Then they will share more of their curatorial experiences and how they worked with indigenous artists. Then for the last part, Jacob Boehme, the founding director of Yirramboi First Nation Arts Festival in Melbourne. He's now an independent curator, and he'll be joining us and tell us more about his curating experience and how he works with indigenous artists as a curator. So now, let me start with the term indigeneity. Indigeneity, this term actually began in the 1989 when the UN agencies wrote the indigenous rights and cultural rights to their official resolution. It can accommodate with our historical context and has broadened its definition on a regional level. So before the Spanish and Dutch colonists arrived in Taiwan in the 17th century, we have more than 26 indigenous peoples who lived on this island. And each group has its own language and tradition. Each group has its haunting area and protocols. And each group has its belief and social system. For example, people of Lugai and Baiwan are hierarchical societies. They sustained strict classification, and they were known for their highly skilled carving and pottery culture. People of Amis, who self-identified as Bangza, living in the northeast, and Amis, living in the southeast Taiwan. They are matrilineal society, and they ran with an age-set system. Unlike Lugai, Baiwan, Bangza, and Amis, who have strong collective awareness, people of Atayat, Sadik, and Telugu highlight one's significance and greatness. The only rule for these three groups is Gaya, or we say Gaga. Gaya, or Gaga, means everything in the world. It includes natural and social knowledges, and it refers to, for example, ritual, taboo, life and death, law and regulation, etc. It is said, in these three groups, it is said, man who is qualified as a great hunter, a woman who weaves perfectly, can meet their ancestors after death. So now I will go to my slide. As you can see, there are two pictures. There are two pictures on the screen. These two pictures are the collections from Dutch Museum. They showed how Western colonists perceived Taiwan indigenous peoples. Not working. And next, this is these two. I'll give you a little history background. When Japan took over Taiwan in 1895, the colonial government actually exploited politics and economics to establish their right to rule in Taiwan. Besides, they used education as an instrument to attain their assimilation goal. They set up, like the left one, they set up police posts and primary schools in many villages. Indigenous peoples were asked to speak Japanese language and to wear Japanese traditional clothes. So the next one, okay. This is a photography book published in Japan. In fact, I have to say Japanese rulers have done thorough research on race and geography in Taiwan. And there are more publications and papers about this history where you can find them online. Next. So when Kuomintang, the Chinese Nationalist Party, ruled Taiwan since 1945, the governor continued the assimilation tactics against indigenous peoples. For example, indigenous peoples were forced to adopt the Han Chinese paternal naming system and have to speak in Mandarin. In fact, since the 70s and 80s, Taiwanese local and indigenous movements have attempted to reverse the single identity. Many indigenous intellectuals fought for sovereign rights by participating in politics, education, literature, performance, and visual arts. There are more and more artists who either return home to relearn their culture from the elders or stepped into the contemporary art world. Next. This is a performance artwork created by artist Anchi. Her native name is Jiwas. In my opinion, this work reflects how the household registration system confused her identity as a mixed indigenous person. Later, she will be joining us. Please feel free to leave your questions if you wanted to hear more of this work. Okay. In terms of indigenous art in Taiwan, it is important to clarify that there is no equivalent of art in any of our indigenous languages. Indigenous peoples made artifacts to facilitate their daily life. So the concept of art was first introduced in Japanese colony. The creations made by indigenous peoples were seen as primitive art or ethnic art in colonial writing. And indigenous peoples were also encouraged to make and sell their crafts or to perform in front of the tourists. This is an artwork made by a Baiwan chief. This is made by another Binuyumayang chief. They are the evidence of the Japanese colonial influence. So, the definition for Taiwanese indigenous contemporary art was actually determined by museums and galleries. Despite the arguments of the definition, our indigenous artists have shown their ability to make high-quality art and at the same time share their culture through art making. This is a public art made by a Dayak artist, Yuma Dalu, which is commissioned by Taoyuan Airport Corporation. This work is commissioned by Indigenous Peoples Cultural Foundation and exhibited in Pulima Art Award exhibition at Taiwan Museum of Contemporary Art in 2014. This is a digital print for portraits of indigenous peoples around the world. And this work, Folutsu, is commissioned by Indigenous Peoples Cultural Foundation in response to the theme Luma Nu Adingu for Pulima Art Festival in 2018. Folutsu means heart. Luma Nu Adingu means home, where the spirits dwell. Both are from Amis language. This work exhibited in Pulima Art Award exhibition at Kaohsiung Museum of Fine Arts. And this is a series of work from Alun Luluan, who won the grand prize in Pulima Art Award and exhibited at Kaohsiung Museum of Fine Arts in 2016. And this work relates to life and death, and I have to say ingeniously responds the theme with its 3 images. Another grand prize-winning works in Pulima Art Award was exhibited at Kaohsiung Museum of Fine Arts in 2016. The artist wants to remind tourists that they should not take away the stone slab which belongs to the local residents, because the ancestor spirit lies in every stone. If you took the stone away, you let the spirits of nowhere to stay. So we have seen many artworks above, and I have to say they have shown their ability to adapt in contemporary art. However, we can still feel the artist's anxieties and hesitation to jump into the Western-dominated art market. Allow me to quote from Yu Shilin, former chief director of Taiwanese Indigenous Modern Art Center. He argues in his 2009 article, Independent Curating and the Development of Indigenous Art, that the indigeneity within contemporary indigenous creations can never refer to the common ground of the mainstream art world. Debates on modernity among indigenous artists, as well as the identity in indigenous art, requires highly compassionate curatorial perspectives. Lin's argument reflects curatorial institute's purposes and presumptions. They did not include the complexity within the topics of struggle, resistance, and multiple narratives in indigenous arts. 10 years later, Man Ruixu, a veteran independent curator, pointed out his position as an outsider when he curated the exhibition When Gazalisian Culture Meets the Vertical City in Sandiman Township of southern Taiwan. Xu declares, Taiwanese indigenous art practice have not been included in the whole contemporary art system or progression for the past 100 years. The questions about indigenous contemporary art and its relations to society and to politics should not be seen through global, modern, or cosmopolitan theories. Instead, the answers should be thought locally with a down-to-earth attitude and its historical due process. I think Xu's concern highlights the fact that indigenous contemporary art is still out of Western art theories. Over the years, support from government and art galleries have increased the visibility of indigenous art. Academic discussions of Anthropocene, cultural diversity, and traditional ecological wisdom have also expanded the importance of indigenous art. More and more experienced indigenous artists gained national and international reputation, and that makes them dive even deeper into their tradition. And that has inspired more emerging artists to begin their journey in indigenous art. In recent years, researchers suggest we allocate 4 generations of indigenous artists according to their vibrancy and styles. The first generation is called predecessors. They devoted themselves to preserving traditional techniques in Japanese colonial regime and transmitted their techniques to the next generation. The second is veteran artists who were born after the 50s. They participated in indigenous movements and claimed the cultural value of their arts. The third, prime artists, either inherited from the veteran artists or studied art and design. They are active in the modern contemporary art market and have built individual styles. The youngest generation are trained in professional art schools. They are familiar with contemporary forms and have less burden to express themselves. Again, I want to quote from a Bangsa independent curator, Nagao Budun, who was also former curator for Pulima Art Festival in 2018. She said, because we are indigenous, traditions would be present in our contemporary art. This is also our feature. If one wanted to explain contemporary art, he could go study. But we are different. We rediscuss it because our contemporariness and tradition are inseparable. Now I will use Pulima Festival as an example and share the curatorial concepts. Pulima Festival was established in 2012. Pulima is from Taiwan language. Lima means hand or number of 5 in many Austronesian languages. And Pulima refers to a person with superb creativity and outstanding craftsmanship. Apart from Pulima Festival, we have Pulima Art Award. The festival and award take place every 2 years. It carries the responsibilities to promote and to show the new facet of indigenous art in Taiwan. Since it's biennial, we have enough time to examine, to adjust our program, and to try different curating models. In January, we set up theme in indigenous language. We planned national and international collaborations to create dialogues and conversations. And we launched new talent programs to find new and fresh ideas. So it's our 5th festival this year. We aim to empower the indigenous curators and to form a dynamic force in the environment. We broke the festival structure and launched an open call for the selection of curatorial projects. 6 projects were selected and supported to take place in different villages from this September to next March. We grouped these 6 emerging curators to be our Pulima curatorial team. And these 6 are actually from different cultures and professional backgrounds. Dondon has deep clothes in his hometown for decades. He is a multidisciplinary artist and has been invited to perform and exhibit in many international festivals. Milu is a curator of Ataya and Han Chinese heritage. She just finished a dance film program and is organizing a children's exhibition in her mother's village. Labai and Dalun have concern about the mining issues. Labai will curate an exhibition in a mine site in her hometown. Dalun is doing his cross-cultural researches and plan to make a solo play and documentary film. Gai Nga, who has professional curation training background, he questioned himself of how a real person should look like. He is now building an Amish traditional house by hand in his hometown. The youngest curator, Delu, put efforts on reinterpreting the tradition through his choreography practices. We have conducted 6 field study routes in their villages since this April. All the dialogues and connections happened between these curators have been collected and documented. There will be a final collaborative exhibition next June, and we are excited to see the collaborative experimentation between these 6 curators. Thank you. So, I just made some general introduction. Then later, I'm very excited to invite our artists and curators to join me. And before they came in, we will play a festival trailer, which is Pulima Festival for this year. So let's have a look. Hello, hi everyone, and I have two guests here. Welcome Dondon and
Hi.
welcome Anchi.
Hey.
Well, so since you're already here, so I will start my first question to Dondon. Dondon, you have been working in art section for decades, and you have been invited to travel and to exhibit as well as to perform in many countries. I remember you have been in London, France, Japan, China, and anywhere elsewhere?
Venezuela.
Norway?
Yeah.
Venezuela. Whoa. So, and I know your recent travel is to Melbourne and Perth. Yeah. And you have been appointed as a head curator for Pulima Art Festival 2020. And you have your own festival in your villages. So how is that you've been so active and energetic? So I don't know, maybe it's connected with your name, Dondon. So will you just introduce yourself to the audience? Yeah.
Kanai dam soi, kanai da do pong, ambia nam ho, ya ko tong tong Hounwn, menak ko adang domong, kas ku bibada o, menak heni o, nam ngau ni ali ni heni o, so pupi yahbahang heni ha. This is my traditional language from Telugu. Okay. 我刚刚的意思就是，就是大家好，我是东东洪文，然后我来自同门部落这样，然后很高兴今天可以透过这样的方式来跟大家来分享一些话语这样子。
So, hi, I'll do the translation. My name is Dondon Hounwn, and I'm the Telugu Nation. I'm very happy to be here to share my experiences and thoughts with everyone.
然后我是东东洪文，然后我是泰鲁格族，然后也是Elug创作艺术公寮的创办人，然后同时也是普利马艺术节的策展人之一。那我自己本身从事表演、影像、装置跟音乐这样子的创作。
So I'm the Telugu. Dondon is the Telugu Nation, and I'm also the founder. He's also the founder of the Elug Art Corner. I'm also one of the curators in the Pulima Art Festival this year. I'm an artist as well. My art practice surrounds performance, video, installation, and music production.
Right. Yeah, so, and tell us a bit about yourself, Anchi.
Sure. Ramasu, Lokasu, Lalu Mahugoga, Jiwas. Hi, everyone. First of all, I would like to acknowledge that we are right now on the land, on the Plains Indigenous people, Kaitagala Nation's territory in Taipei to proceed this online symposium. My name is Anchi. My Ataya Indigenous name is Jiwas. I'm a visual artist who is interested in using performance in the visual art context and new media tools as my creative method to talk about the pathway of searching my identity. And actually this year I'll be, I will have one work in Dondon's curation. And but today I'm very humbled to be here with everyone, especially with Dondon. I have a great respect for him. And so I'll be sharing a little bit about my work, but also I'll be Dondon's translator for today.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Anchi. Yeah, so Dondon, you have returned to your village, Domong. Well, I think everyone should learn it. Lomo.
Lomo.
This is your village name.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain it a little bit why this village is called Lomo? Because I know there's interesting stories behind it.
Okay. Domo 就是它其实是日文的日文的翻译，然后因为我们是日据时代被迫迁到现在这个社区，那这个地方因为有铜矿，所以日本在殖民的时候也是为了这样的一个物产，所以他就称这边就是铜豆，就是日文的铜，然后因为我们那边是一个溪谷，然后往外就是花莲市区，所以他们就觉得很像一个门的样子，所以就是豆蒙。所以就是我们其实跟殖民的历史有关系，那我们就一直沿用到现在。
Okay, so Lomo was actually the Japanese pronunciation, right? So Lomo, Lo is the
Iron?
Copper.
Copper.
Copper. And so in Dondon's community is where a lot of coppers were from. And when Japanese came, they thought, well, this place is looks like a copper door. Is that right? Copper gate. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so you've been back to your village and you founded Elug.
Yeah.
Art corner. Art corner. Okay. So, and you now have your own festivals in the villages. So when do you have this idea? When do you come out this idea?
我就开始。
对，这个是为什么开始有艺术节？
其实是从实验开始的，就是2010年开始，就是我回到部落里面开始做的是部落的剧场。那其实部落剧场的最大的目的是希望能够传承这个古老的仪式内涵，然后迁移的历史、古老的神话，可以在表演里面被展现出来，然后希望能够让部落的人可以重新连接这一些历史的力量。那其实在连续3年以后，我发现这样子的事情不够，因为演出结束后，部落的人会记得我们演出的内容跟过程，可是具体的影响就比较不明显。那后来我发现，既然我必须在部落里面生活，所以我也必须想办法让部落继续活下去。所以我就开始回到一个部落人的生活，去了解部落的产业，然后跟传统脉络的连接，然后参与部落的政治议题。然后我从2015年开始，我就开始实验一种新形态的部落旅行。那参与者必须参与从部落的农耕、工艺，甚至文化的体验。最后我们要一起完成一场环境剧场的体验。然后在这样共创的过程中学习。那这个过程中，因为部落有了实质的回馈，然后开始让部分的族人有了一些不同的想法，愿意参与我们这样的一个实验。那其实艺术节的基础是源自于我这几年的成果。我希望借由不同的形态，然后让部落来呈现深化部落场域的这样的一个独特性，这样子，所以才有了策动部落艺术节的这样的一个想法。
Okay. So what Dondon just said is this all began from an experimental approach in 2010. He did a theater piece in his community. The original intention of this work was to retrieve and to carry on the meaning of the lost rituals and the history of our people's migration within Taiwan, and incorporating our ancient stories into the performance in order to facilitate people in the community to reconnect with our culture again. He continued this kind of experimental theater for 3 consecutive years. And he realized this is not enough, because after the performance, people in the community would remember the content and story, but wasn't any obvious impact or change to the community. So later on, he kind of had this an epiphany that since he already lived in his own community, then he need to think a way to keep his own community continuously alive. So therefore, if his daily life is the community, then this allows he to understand the connection between the local industry ecology and the context of the traditions. Living in his own community also allows him to participate the politics and also participate politics and pay attention to the issues in the community. And so in 2015, he started a new approach of experimenting a theater piece by traveling in his own community. And all the participants must participate farming, craft making, and several cultural experiences, and eventually co-create a site-specific theater together. And all participants learn from the process of co-creating a work together. This method of co-creation or collaboration process had a real substantial impact to Dondon's community, and people really start have different thoughts. They began more willing to participate his experimental theaters. So this really lies the formation of the art festival lies on the successful results of those previous years of experimental theaters.
Wow. Yeah. I think our audience already have a lot of questions about this practice, but we will accept the question later. Then let's go back to Dong. So you're now appointed as the head curator for Pulima Art Festival 2020. So what is your expectation, and what did you do in this festival?
如同我提到的，就是部落场域的独特性。那这次我们没有选择在美术馆，然后或者是城市里面去做展览，而是回到社区里面去发生这样的一个互动。我也认为也是一个非常适合现在的一个时机。过去我们看到艺术展似乎已经被定义成一种阶级的象征，但其实在原住民族的文化，我们随时都存在着艺术。尤其是流动的自觉，那我觉得那是被压抑之后的现象。那我们的创作力是自然而然发生在当代跟传统的不断提问，然后同时我觉得我们的艺术性产生在变迁与矛盾的时代里面。自觉是我们最重要的事情，那自觉后的翻动，我觉得尤其是应该要先发生在部落里面，所以这也是艺术节最重要的转型。对
，Good word.
Sure. Very good. Okay. So as Dondon mentioned earlier, the uniqueness of the area in the community, his community, he didn't, or we didn't choose to exhibit in the museum or any urban setting. Any urban settings. Instead, we choose returning to the community for interactions to incur. I don't think this form of exhibiting in a non-institutional space also quite matches with the timing in nowadays. In the past, art exhibitions almost had perceived as a symbol of certain class. However, in fact, in the indigenous culture, art exists anytime within us. It's like a flowing consciousness. He would say this phenomenon happened after suppression, and our creative energy naturally happens when questioning back and forth between contemporary time and traditional aspects. And our art is generated in time of generational changes and contradictions. And so being conscious about these issues are the most important things. After that, the community is the place to start with in order to change it. This is also the most important aspect for the art festival to transform.
Yeah, I totally agree, because it's really our fifth festival, and we do need to do some changes, and it is the timing that we go back to the villages and to start to get along with the communities and to learn from them and respond this, what we have learned. That's our generations. That's what we should do. Yeah, good work.
就是大家要一起努力的事情。
It's a collective work.
So, well, as we have a guest speaker, who is Ashley Chang, the curator from Perth Institute, and since you've mentioned you have a collaboration, you were invited by Ashley to perform and to exhibit in Perth, and that is an extraordinary experience for you. So maybe we would invite Ashley here. Hello, Ashley.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
How are you, Ashley?
Very good. Nice to see Dondon again. I'm very excited to be part of this conversation.
Yeah. Ashley, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience a bit?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Yihsin Chang. I originally from Taiwan. I moved to Perth 10 years ago. I've been working as a curator, project coordinator, organizer for public art and festival. But my passion is more of intercultural exchange experience. So this is kind of the good opportunity for me to situate in a new place and try to be a facilitator for different culture and different dialogue that's happening now around our world today.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. So you've been you have organized a collaboration project with Dondon, and you brought Dondon to stay in the communities in Perth. So can you share us these experiences? How you curate this? How you organize it?
Yeah, I have to say this is a kind of a very interesting sort of a development process because coming from Taiwan, and I found out there's a huge Taiwanese overseas community in Perth, and because of my background is in art, and my previous job was working at the American Institute in Taiwan, which we focus on cultural exchange. And so I was really looking forward to having the opportunity to be able to work on something like this again. So when I had the opportunity to work with a local commercial gallery to present an artwork to Taipei, we started to have the Perth and Taipei culture exchange, which is start from the residency program. But then in 2019, because the Perth-Taipei relationship continued to develop, we actually focused on this 20th anniversary of the sister city between Perth and Taipei. So that was the time we had a curator go to Taiwan for conduct some research. So I became the assistant curator to help to organize the itinerary and selecting a few different artists for the Phpah curator to meet. And so Dondon was actually, we didn't get a chance to meet Dondon, but we saw his artwork at Taipei Fine Arts Museum. It was the artwork that he got chosen to be in the Taipei Art Award. And so we were really excited. And also the focus for our culture exchange is really try to find the link between our two cultures. So of course we share Aboriginal cultures, Taiwan and Australia. So the idea is to bring Dondon to engage with the local Aboriginal community. And so through the exhibition project, we get the opportunity for Dondon to come for 10 days, include a few couple field trip, meeting with the York community and meeting with the elder and going to the bush. And I think that it's kind of, we try to create that, you know, almost like first contact and, you know, just to provide that platform, that space for the two cultures to speak to each other. I think before we can, you know, really connect to each other, we need to be friends. And I think, you know, almost like, because I know we're talking about a lot of curating process, but for the new space, it's almost like try to introduce that communication is actually more important for the future, for continue that dialogue. So I don't know, well, maybe I'll just share some of the images that when Dondon was here. Okay, I'll do the share screen. Hope this one will work for everyone to see. Let me have unfolding act. Can you see the PowerPoint? Can you see my PowerPoint?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
Oh, okay.
Can you see now?
Yes, we've got that on the screen.
Okay, yeah. So this is the outside verse for the Perth content.
Actually, I'm sorry, but can you return to your screen? Yes. Then we can see that photos, but we cannot see if you put it on a full screen.
Oh,
so maybe,
okay. So maybe we go from this way.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and so, yeah, because for this Perth Taipei Culture Exchange, we also formed a partnership with Taipei Fine Arts Museum. So the director of Taipei Fine Arts Museum also lead a group of their curator to come out to do the research. So we got an opportunity for them to pay the visit. And this is the Aboriginal traditional owner, Bon Josh Maguire, to give a welcome to country. When Dondon and the group arrived, he conducted a smoke ceremony. And this is with our Phpah chair and chairperson and the deputy chair with the curator, Charlotte Hickson, in the middle. So Charlotte and I, we had 10 days around Taiwan during that time. And I think this is the most important one for Dondon and his team to meet up with the York Aboriginal artists and the community. So we had gone to this top mountain. When you see this rock, it's the healing rock. And so they're very kind to spend their time to meet with Dondon and the group, and the Community Arts Network, which is the organization who advocates for Aboriginal voices. They organized a picnic for us to meet with the group. So I think with this one, we really felt the Aboriginal community in York, they really appreciate that, you know, the art organization, two art organizations, Phpah and Community Arts Network, bring the artists and international artists to meet them. So just give you some of this shot with the city of Perth to welcome Director Lim Ping from Taipei Fine Arts Museum to visit Perth. And we had invited some local Taiwanese overseas community to come, and we in this group exhibition we also got Luo Yijun, Rao Jiaen, and Zhou Yuzhen. Zhou Yuzhen unfortunately couldn't come, but the other artists have been there. So this is the opening of the unfolding act, and in the middle part you can see Dondon's work, and George has given Welcome to Country, and this is Dondon's performance. And with the opening night, lots of people, they comment on how they were really touched with the two strong old cultures that actually come together. So it was a real privilege and an amazing evening for everyone. So just this will be the City of Perth Commissioner and Limping and Phpah Director together. And this is Phpah Director Amy on the right, and the CEO of Community Arts Network, Monica Ken there. We have some sort of group photo. And this is a shot with Zhou Yuzhen's artwork with the Dondon's work in the background. So I think, yeah, it's a real privilege to be able to be involved in that, and especially Dondon and his team was just impressed. A lot of local people. I can't thank you enough for what you have brought to us. So.
So maybe Dondon should share a bit about this impression and the experience when you visit the Aboriginal communities and these collaborations.
我觉得要分成几个部分来表达，就是这次的经验这样。
Dondon thinks that this experience needs to be classifying in different parts.
就是第一个是我觉得那个博斯当代艺术中心，他们的团队，然后包含 Ash， 我觉得他们跟我们一样有一个非常激动的特质，就是随时可以应变那个变化，然后去解决那个需求。所以在这个部分的合作，我觉得是非常的快速，然后也让我们马上有想法的时候，可以很有效率的去执行这样子。
So Dondon thinks that really the experience working with the Perth Institute of Contemporary Arts, was very 好的吗？我记得。
Yeah, it was a wonderful
wonderful
experience. You guys have been so,
proactive.
Yeah.
And they were very proactive. And if there's any thought, the museum side always was so supportive, and that really helped both sides to create a work in a very efficient way.
然后再来就是我觉得在这个过程中，我们跟那个当地，就是我们有进到他们的社区，然后他们也带了，就是当地的原住民的耆老也带了我们到他们的圣山去。那我觉得有一个非常强烈的感受，就是我看见那个在人跟灵这个关系里面，然后我发现他们还是存在，然后这个中间，比如说他们在对这个仪式，然后或者是进到圣山那样子的很敬畏的这样子的一个动作，然后语言，然后让我感觉到说，没有台湾跟澳洲，也没有你是谁我是谁，我觉得就在我感觉到就是进到他们圣山的那个经验，打破了那个各种界限，回到了那个最纯粹人跟灵的那个关系。对，所以我觉得这是我去澳洲还就是非常强烈的一个经验。
So when they were in Australia, they got a chance to visit the local indigenous their community, and also have this opportunity to visit the sacred mountain there. And the connection there for Dondon was not, it's all about like the people to people, and certainly all the border, like what we say, Taiwan, Australia, these are countries, right? In that exchange experience, that the idea of border really dissolved, and they just reconnect to the land and reconnect how we were spiritually, and yeah, that's a very wonderful experience.
Yes, you communicate without words.
Yeah,
and you know each other. Yeah, that must be a wonderful experience.
然后最后就是在我演出的时候，有一个非常特别的神秘经验，就是我感觉到的事情，跟他们有一个有 shaman 经验的原住民的艺术家感觉到的是一模一样的。对，然后我就觉得不知道为什么，就是不管我们面对怎样不同的历史，可是我觉得回到了那一个神圣的，或者是神秘的，或者是人灵之间的，就是好像我们都是一样的在面对这个世界、这个时代的流动，这样子。
So for Dondon, at the end of the performance in Perth, Dondon had this almost the same, I think it's the same experience with the local shaman, and that experience was very magical to Dondon. And because we don't speak the same language, we have different history, but because of that spiritual connection, that really make us return to who we were and who we are as people.
Yeah, and you connect with the spirits.
Connect with the spirits.
Directly.
Yeah.
So wow.
Yeah. So skip the border, just to the spirits.
Yeah, I remember. I remember some of the local Aboriginal artists. They were really impressed with like Dondon's voice, and I think the voice really transcended everybody, going so high. And I think that's what Dondon sort of experienced. Like he was saying, he was doing the performance in the central gallery of Phpah, but then he was. Can I say that? He was looking up the ceiling, and then he felt like there's no ceiling. It was just purple cloud something. And after that, like everybody, he then went to this artist, and she was saying she saw the same thing. So I think it's a really powerful experience. As you said, yeah, it's beyond physical.
Yeah. That's wonderful experiences. Yeah, so Ashley, I'm just curious how, just last time we talked and you mentioned you are facing a pandemic situation. It's quite harsh there. So I think maybe we can just talk a little bit about this, right? Yeah.
I have to say, because a lot of Taiwanese people have experienced SARS, and the Taiwanese government respond very quickly with all the measurements. But this is a really new thing for Australian government, and so. From end of March, the Western Australia government, we decided to close the border. So at the moment, we are still able to go to work. So all the program was still, be able to do. But that kind of make us to have a hybrid program. Like we need to have a digital program. We have to have a physical program. And this I find, like the forum like this, where you host online with this symposium, still have to connect with people. It's really amazing. And I think what I'm really quite interested is, of course, when Dondon earlier mentioned about, this year the Pulima, the focus on, going back, return to your local, see what's there. And I think it's definitely, when we talk about globalization, that you look at the locality, like what's your strength. It's actually within your own. And this is something like I feel the pandemic helped us to look inward, who we are, what we are doing, why we are doing. So I think it's very interesting. It affects us all the same. But I think what, Dondon been doing in the last few years, especially his decision back to, the community and bring people back. Yeah, it's a really, good story to tell. And I'm looking forward to hear more or following with him more.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. Since I think we're gonna have a few questions and feedbacks from the audience, so maybe we would like to invite Donald back.
Hello.
Hey, Donald.
There has been a question from our good friend Gary Platt for Dondon about the work he did in Lomo, and maybe there it is in the banner. Did the people in the village respond positively to the development of those local festivals? And I'm also curious how interactive the artist audience exchange was.
有个观众问说，同门的当地的部落居民对于你的艺术节都是正面的回应吗？还是他们有别的想法？
它不是一下子促成的。
We will answer Gary's question first.
就直接回答。
对，先回答。
就是它不是一下子就变成一个艺术节的规模。我们是从产业、从文化、从政治，然后进行很多样的实验，然后透过这个纪录片，然后田野工作来连接家族之间的合作，然后是这样10年的一个过程。那这中间当然也有不信任的关系，可是因为我自己本身就是同门的人，然后我的家族力量也让我可以在部落里面去完成这件事情，然后再来是母语很重要，就是我的母语能力，然后我要用母语去跟这个部落里面去沟通对话，然后我从来就不觉得就是一开始就是透过这样的家族的关系去推动，所以我们还在实验当中。那今年我们的艺术节也才是第2届而已，可这之前有一个10年的实验。
Okay. So the formation of the art festival didn't just happen right away. It actually
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. It actually happened. We actually Dondon actually accumulate 10 years to collectively to have this momentum to push the festival, and this momentum including showing like cultural kind of promotions or like playing documentary films and like maybe like industry, and then also like local industry development and knowing the ecology as well. And so knowing all the details from Tongmen community is a way to, as the foundation to for the festival, but also because Dondon is from the community, so he also speaks the local language. So he has the family. He used family as a unit to push this event.
Yeah, because his family is supportive.
Yeah, supportive, and so this collective energy and momentum really lays the foundation for the festival. And of course, not everyone in the community agree with this in the beginning, but now because the festival is only in the second year, but the festival really relies on the accumulation of cultural planning, cultural interactions and cultivations in the last 10 years.
Yeah, when no Dondon, he's been in the villages like over 10 years. So he's been doing a lot. He interacts with his communities, and he just visits each store and listen to the stories of these peoples, his peoples. So I think it is quite a fundamental. He's done quite fundamental researches, and he has done a lot to communicate with the communities. So that does help him to move on his festivals.
Yeah, to push the festival forward.
Well, it is a very personal investment over time, and it can't be rushed, and it can't be forced. I'm also thinking, based on everything so far today, about the idea of art and artifacts, and the idea of daily life being lived artfully. And I wonder if there's any comment, Dondon or Alice or Ashley or Anchi, Jiwas, about that idea, because it's becoming increasingly important to me, not just because of COVID, but just because of being who I am in the world at this stage of my life. The idea of artful living, and does that have any resonance for any of you? And what does it mean for you if it does have resonance?
So, and Ashley, do you like to go first?
Okay. I think this is such a good question, and this is something also, a lot of debate, because actually, I'm working across two organizations. Perth Institute of Contemporary Art, consider more high art, and then Community Arts Network is more grassroots. And the work I do with Community Arts Network is specifically focused on culturally and linguistic diversity groups. And so in Perth, we have a huge migration. And so this is a really new area for me to go into. So like, for instance, we have a Palestinian women, they have their, traditional embroidery, and each region, they, develop their own skill, they develop their own technique and tell their different stories. And for me, like, this is their daily thing. This is the way they talk about their life. This is the way the only thing that they connected to their culture, but also how they live now and how they, communicate with the other women who from different region or the other, people migrate here. And I find, of course, for me, like, art always is a tool of communication, and it's a tool of social change. And so I find this is really a very important thing. And then when we talk about, the artifacts and, how we're doing daily life, it should be that strong hold that essence is so important, and how we actually find a way to communicate. And like Dondon previously said, you know, they decided not to go into the white cube, the high institutional, you know, exhibiting space, but they want to just help people to see the art is everywhere. Yeah.
Ashley, I was also looking at those pictures of Dondon's work, both within performance with the crowd around it, and also with maybe nobody in the image, just the objects. And I was thinking that objects and installations are beautiful, but in a way, I don't know if in indigenous arts, I don't know if it's only in indigenous art, but people, I wanted people to be there. It gets activated by the presence of human beings. And
Yes. Yeah.
that was my impression.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you could say his sculpture is holding the space, and that inviting people to be part of it. And actually, that structure Dondon made, he can tell more about that structure because that related to his culture. And you are absolutely right. I should leave this for Dondon to talk for himself.
Okay. So,
Okay.
take it away, the three of you.
Okay.
So Dondon actually has a response to your question, but I'm gonna try my best for this one because it's quite poetic. So returning back to the perspective or to the point of view of the ritual, taking the energy or the strength from that and then push upward, return to the simpleness, and then be conscious of the living
Life perspective.
life perspective. Sure. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
我是不是写的太文言文了？
Dondon just wrote poem, so it's difficult to explain it in English. So we're trying.
我简单讲一下，就是说，面对疫情，艺术节它变成了一个集体疗愈，所以我们观看到的就是这个，因为疫情，我觉得我们面对的不只是疫情，我们重新又检视到我们的历史的创伤，然后这一些我们没有再去重视的这些殖民的历史等等。然后或者是当代的冲突议题矛盾，全部会在这个艺术节里面，透过艺术家的创作，或者是部落的人的观点里面重新被提出来。所以我会认为它是一个集体的仪式，集体的疗愈的仪式。
艺术节。
对，艺术节本身。
Okay, so for Dondon, the art festival is like a form of collective therapy. This is the time we are facing COVID-19, and everyone is forced to look into yourself deeper. And so this is also a great opportunity to relearn your history, no matter it's like colonial aspects or like family and so on. So for Dondon's art festival, this will be a gathering for reviewing all these different aspects of things that we probably overlook in the past.
Yeah, I agree. Because Dondon, you just said there is no art. This concept doesn't exist in the villages, in the communities. So, in fact, art, I think for Dondon as well, it becomes a method. It becomes a tool to let us look back the trauma that we have been colonized and we've been suffered from large experiences. So it's more like art action. It's like a movement, art movement. So it's not art. It is deeply connected with our life.
Maybe like a social therapy.
Yes,
way.
a social therapy, things like that.
And it can heal. It can
Yes.
heal. And I know from reading his biography, he has done ritual medicine rituals, and you know, there's the therapeutic aspect of the arts is very valuable. And Anchi, what about for you?
Sure.
Yeah. You've done performance art.
Oh, yeah. I've been doing performance now with my translation. All right. To respond to your question, I never really think of. I just think art is my daily life, and it's in my daily life, and I use the name of arts to readdress myself and my family history, because I'm a Taiwan descendant, but actually in
Alice.
previous slides, there's a work with my work with the stamps. I don't know if you remember, but it's kind of trying to address that my identity, being an indigenous Taiwanese, that my family really doesn't really give me any information, not much information about this culture. And so for me, I use art to ask questions and to address my frustration about not knowing everything. And so art is a form for myself to ask questions.
So you're an investigator of yourself and your culture.
Yes, I am. I'm being very hard to myself at this point, but it's okay.
Well, that image we saw of your, I assume that was your stomach, and there was mud, and it looked like you were holding a rock, or there was some sort of stone. Is that what that object was?
Actually, it's a seal. You know, the stamping seal. So. Going back to the word, it's called raw ripened happiness, and it's also a piece that I'm trying to ask myself that, like, why knowing my identity, that I have to go through Japanese colonial documents to know about my background. And so the literal translation for raw ripened happiness were actually the classifications in the Japanese colonial time, where they classify the level of the assimilation of an indigenous person is or was. And so I looked into my family documents, and then I saw a raw in the race category, and then I have some extensive families. They have ripened in this classification too. And full is actually to classify someone as fully assimilated into the mainstream Chinese culture, or they are ethnic Chinese. So Shen is raw is to describe someone as completely non-culturally Han or civilized. Yeah. And ripen is still showing some trace of like indigenous behaviors, or still practicing some cultural practices, but then still kind of have assimilate to the mainstream cultures. And so that one, I'm kind of asking that question. And the fact I'm using the seal, the stamp, to use the mud and then keep stamping myself to my belly button, is I'm actually trying to reconnect with the land again, but I wasn't sure if that this is kind of like experimental phase for me to rethink my relationship with the traditional with my identity and the STEM as a tool to classify or label indigenous people in the past time till nowadays. I hope I say clearly.
You have explained that beautifully. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I was very moved to hear your explanation. It all made perfect sense. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Now, Alice, are there other areas we need to explore now before we head to our part 2?
I think that's it, but maybe there'll be more questions, then we can answer that maybe later.
If there are any questions, audience, do send them our way right now. I do have a question about Dondon's voice. Ashley, you mentioned his voice, and is that through speech or song? What kind of vocalization was there?
应该是我自己诠释的那个传统吟，就是我自己是传统吟唱，可是我有被我自己诠释过。
So it's traditional song, but Dondon also input his own way in the songs.
Yes, he reinterpreted.
Interpret. Yes.
Okay. Ashley, is that performance in any way documented and available through the Perth Contemporary Arts, or is there some record of it?
Well, unfortunately, we haven't got a professional sort of recording yet, but I do have on my phone. I did try to download it, but because I was in the middle of crowd, so I wouldn't be able to share. But if people are interested, I'm happy to share privately.
Okay, thank you. Alice, I think we need to bring on your next and final guest, please.
Okay, so now I play the video, which is the collaboration between Yirramboi and Pulima. So maybe we'll play it now and have a look.
See you later.
See you later.
That was fantastic. I want to be there with all those events. I think now is a good time to bring out Jacob, who is joining us, I believe, from Melbourne. Please bring him out. The founding creative director of Yirramboi Festival, and also a performer and creator in your own right. So please, if Jacob is there, could he join me on the stage? And Alice, come back as well, please.
Hi.
Hello. We just met.
Yeah.
The session started. So can you tell me the correct pronunciation of your surname? Is it Boehme?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay,
you got
good.
it.
So you founded Yirramboi in what year?
2016. We founded the Yirramboi First Nations Arts Festival. It was an initiative of the City of Melbourne and Creative Victoria.
And that trailer, which again, it's terrific. I was really excited to watch that. Is that from one season, or is this the cooperation that you did with Pulima? Is that evidence of that?
Yeah, that was the highlights of the collaboration that we worked on together as festivals. We developed a relationship back in 2016 when I first became creative director put in charge of creating a festival for Melbourne. And I was introduced to a whole bunch of different companies in Taiwan. It was a Ministry of Culture Taiwan and an Australia Council initiative to do some exchange. So I came to Taiwan, and because my background is in dance, I was introduced to a whole bunch of First Nations dance companies. But during that trip, I developed a really lovely friendship with both Zilin and also Alice. And so it was out of the friendships and our relationship that a collaboration between the two festivals was born.
And so, just if succinctly, if possible, that looked like such a rich amount of activity. That's what was so exciting about it. You had the Miss First Nations competition. There were concerts. There were the fellows with the red sticks, kind of rowing their way through the air. The people dancing in circles. Do you want to talk about about the choices you made to put this together?
Yeah. Okay. Well, firstly, I suppose I should acknowledge that. Firstly, I just want to acknowledge that I'm joining you all tonight from unceded sovereign territory of the Wurundjeri people of Melbourne, but I also want to acknowledge that I come from mixed heritage. So my mother is fifth generation Australian with Irish, English and Scottish heritage. My father is Aboriginal, so we come from the Narungga and Kaurna peoples of South Australia. And so, number one, it was really about bringing my cultural heritage, and Ella Nakal, who was the then curator of Pulima Festival, we came together basically bringing both of our cultural values, philosophy and heritage to the table first and foremost, which was what determined how we were going to approach the kind of, hey, Watana's here, hello. Yes, that's how we approached how we were going to curate. And not only were the not only were we trying to meet cultural obligations and cultural need, but also trying to look at different curatorial interests that individually we both had and see how they could align. So, number one, we wanted to make it inclusive of all kinds of art forms and practice, but also we had the opportunity to make space particularly for queer Indigenous people and artists to express themselves was one of my number one desires.
And what was as Gary has asked, what was the duration of the festival, and what kind of formats did it have?
So we did an exchange where there was a program. So what we did was a festival. What we came up with was a festival within a festival. So Pulima runs for X amount of time. It goes, I think was it going for a month at that stage, or three to 4 weeks at that stage? And within those couple of weeks in Taiwan during Pulima, Yirramboi artists were afforded 4 to 5 days within that festival, where it was a focus. And again, that was reciprocal. So we did the same in Melbourne. Yirramboi is a 10-day festival, so that there was a festival within the festival that we could showcase and point people to.
And is that Yirramboi, is it every year?
No, it's every 2 years is Yirramboi Festival. I've set that one up. I'm now doing independent curation and practice.
Does that mean you've left Yirramboi?
Yes. Yeah.
And this exchange with Taiwan happened when? In 2018?
Yeah, 2018 and 2019. But my practice kind of is extending beyond that. We've just started another collaboration independently out of a festival between my community, the Narungga community in South Australia, and the Bunun people in Namasha, through working with First Nations curator Biang Isma-Hassan.
And we had the greeting from Watan, who was a guest here in the first Wednesday webinar this week about Indigenous arts. And how do you know him?
Watan was one of the first people that I met on my very first trip to Taiwan, when I was being introduced to the First Nations dance companies that were being supported through programs there. So I met Watan and his company on the very first trip that I ever went to Taiwan, and we've been friends ever since. And Watan and his company were actually part of the exchange between Yirramboi and Pulima.
And can you talk, Jacob, please, about audiences, marketing targets, any of that, how to measure that, how to do it, what kind of language or imagery gets used? I mean, I'm quite interested in the connection between professional makers and producers and audience. You know, what we all need and want from each other. Where was the audience in this edition that involved the cultural exchange?
Well, that was the interesting thing. We in Australia, I suppose that's where the I think probably needs more work. So especially in terms of doing, we in Australia couldn't really control the kinds of marketing about our culture and about us that was going on in another country, because we don't understand that audience. We're not part of that community. So you have to trust that, you know, people on your behalf are speaking and are reaching the audiences that you need to. Back here in Melbourne, when I was charged with developing a festival, what I did there was fight against the institutions, fight against colonial thought, and what we fought for was a First Nations self-determined festival, which meant that there was a lot of problem with quite a few of our partners, and even some of the institutions that we worked with, who don't like giving up power, because what we needed was First Nations voices controlling First Nations marketing, or marketing of a First Nations festival. It doesn't make sense to have somebody translate that through a Western lens. So that's how we were working, was having our marketing was done by Indigenous social media marketing people, as well as we also had on our side, we had First Nations Amis marketing manager called Fred, who is from Taiwan, who was on the Yirramboi team. So he helped us a great deal.
And who did you reach? What kind of audience response? I mean, obviously, there are all those interacting, very joyful looking people in the clips, but who was the audience? Who came? How do you who were you reaching, and what kind of reaction did you have?
Oh, look, it's always a mixed audience for us, and the big thing, so we've been able to, and this is where we specifically chose where we had marketing for queer audiences, so that Miss First Nations was specifically for a queer audience. We had Watan and Carly Shepherd partnering with Chunky Move, who presented them, that was specifically targeted at a dance audience. We were specifically trying to get into existing audiences but put Indigenous artists in front of them, because that's where the opportunities exist and that's where the challenges are, is trying to get Indigenous artists in front of mainstream audiences. So that was the challenge and the opportunity.
And so that did happen.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the nature of mainstream acceptance of these various artists? Are there any particulars you could share or insights that were gleaned from the way you went about this?
Well, not really. It's an ongoing battle, and it's ongoing learning. I mean, we've just had research that has been released from the Australia Council for the Arts, which is all about our country's relationship to First Nations arts. So where you see 90 or 80 or 90% of non-Indigenous Australia saying that arts is important, and that a really good percentage, 70 to 80% of that, are in favour of Indigenous arts being part of our cultural fabric, there's a real kind of misstep between what people say they want and people actually attending Indigenous arts. So again, that's where I say that's the challenge and that's the opportunity. But I will revert back to a lot of what has already been said today about going back locally, because what we have done as Indigenous artists, as curators, as presenters, is we have excelled exceedingly well in being able to walk two worlds. We know how to do Western art, we know how to present, we know how to do the marketing. What hasn't happened is the other way around. So what COVID has presented, like Dondon has said, is a real opportunity to look inward, look back to the communities, reassess and reevaluate what our needs, what our dreams, and what our cultural obligations are, really. Because we've done the Western thing, we've done the Western art deal. The business model is failing all around the world. And so what we as Indigenous artists and Indigenous communities, I think, a lot of us are facing now is the question of how complicit in that system have we become, and what is it that we're actually doing to serve our culture and our community and community needs.
And is that as an independent curator, are those sorts of questions and goals part, I would guess, part of what you're dealing with now as an indie? Am I right?
Yeah, as an indie, but it's a growing movement. There's a lot of questions. That's the similar theme. You know, every time we get on a webinar or a kind of an industry Zoom with our fellow Indigenous colleagues, these are the questions and these are the themes that are coming up.
And it's happening here too in Britain in all sorts of ways. And I was in an online informational arts council meeting, and those kinds of ideas, there is an effort now for underrepresented cultures and peoples to be put in a spotlight, because they damn well deserve it. And if they're not going to get it, I think they're going to claim it.
Well, there's never really it's never really a binary. There's so many more nuances and approaches to this, because there is one way where we have, there's been so much work in getting visibility to First Nations arts and artists in mainstream practice and in small to medium, varying levels of presentation contexts. And yeah, consistently there have been colonial structures that have kept a cap at what Indigenous artists can achieve within that structure. So of course there is There are some people in the Indigenous art world in our camp that will keep pounding on those doors and breaking windows and trying to break those ceilings as well. But there's also, another side of the camp that is going, well, if we have spent 60 to 70% of our energy trying to get into the doors and into those opportunities, what happens? Really, what happens if we take that 60 to 70% wasted on trying to get indoors that remain shut? What happens if we turn that energy towards our own communities and our own needs?
And does that mean then finding, forging new relationships, new spaces, new ways of distributing information, creative information?
Exactly, Donald, exactly. I mean, we're looking at, globally, our industry is kind of in a really perilous situation. Like, there's a business model that's just hanging by a thread that we all realise, whether you're black, white, Indigenous, whatever you are, we all realise that business model is kind of really shaky, and we can't go back to that. So, yeah, this is the opportunity.
I mean, in the UK, I don't know how much you've been following, different countries and things, but the theater, theaters and venues, it is in a very shaky state, and there are many empty buildings and businesses and institutions and organizations that are going to run out of money, and how are they going to be filled? And I think there is a certain there's a need and a responsibility for people who are creative to make themselves known and steer, guide everyone toward whatever the future is going to be holding. So it's quite exciting, if various and scary, to be standing on a cliff edge.
It can be, but then, we're also, like, there are very interesting ways forward that we as Indigenous makers and curators can actually join forces, even though we're looking locally, that we can still keep the bridges open between our continents. For instance, the program that I'm working, and I see Byung has chimed in on the comments and the conversation. Hello, brother. Byung and I are actually working on a project which I started over a year ago, and what we're working on back home here, looking locally, is to be able to reconnect songlines around the dingo dreaming. So for those of you who don't know what a songline is, it's basically, in its most crudest form, is a series of stories that can be songs and dances, but they go from community to community that cover extremely vast amounts of distance and vast amounts of land. So they will follow rivers, they will follow mountains, and they will sing the stories of the country, of the environment. Together, each of those stories form one big story that we call a songline. So what we're doing is we're connecting those songlines about the dingo dreaming. And the dingo is probably one of our youngest songlines in Australia. It's only about 5,000 years old, because what it has come to us through Asia, through trading with our cousins up in the Asian region. So when I first started doing this work, one of my elders turned to me and said, well, if you're going to, follow the story from the south of Australia all the way to the north, you're going to end up in Asia, don't you? And I went, what do you mean? But he went, well, that's where we get the dingo from. And sure enough, the dingo's DNA that we have in Australia belongs to, we find the DNA, the ancestral lineage, in the singing dogs of New Guinea, the pariah dogs of India, and the Formosa dogs of Taiwan. So what Byung and I have created over the internet at the moment is we've created an international children's program where children from the Bunun tribe and children from my community in Narungga are working with our elders to collect and revive cultural stories and information, and through a variety of artists, create responses to that in a range of different art forms, from graphic novels to visual art to stop motion animation, photography, song and dance. And so through that, it's kind of like having digital pen pals. So then the kids get to exchange not only creative output, but cultural information. And we fulfill our cultural obligations by making sure that culture is kept alive and maintained. We also contribute to the growing canon of contemporary Indigenous arts, and we're also giving children an opportunity to expand their worldview of Indigeneity.
What I love about what you've just described is it's both epic, but within that epic structure, there's so much individuality and multiplicity of expression within it. I think if we could bring Alice back on to perhaps address very quickly this question about contemporary collaborative art practices facilitating new relations between Australian Aboriginal clans and Indigenous Taiwanese communities. I guess the simple answer would be yes, it can happen and it can continue to happen. But I don't know if you want to expand on that at all.
Alan?
Yes, do unmute, Alice, please.
Okay. So yes, of course. And because Jacob have told me about his new project, and I'm very excited to hear more of that. And for me, I also share that for this year, we started to do a lot of community works related to the community, and we did a lot of field research. And I have to say, since Pulima Art Festival, we always have our events and activities in the cities because we have to sell the tickets. So it's the very first time we just launched that curatorial project, and to really connect with people in the villages and to work with them and to to share what we thought as a younger generation and to the elders. So it's really a good interaction between different language groups. So yeah, because of the pandemic, we don't have chance to to really move forward to the international collaboration. But maybe we could find time to just share knowledges, share what we've been learned in our projects to to everyone, and we can just I just come out with this idea. Maybe we can have an online forum to talk more about Jacob's project, how he continued this, and how he communicates with his communities from the south to the north, and and what we did recently this year. So I do think the pandemic didn't affect that we can communicate with each other just easily. Yeah, that's what I think.
And if I could make a suggestion for the future, I would love to hear more, not today, but more about rural and urban and what that means in this context, because I think that's a very, and how can rural and urban be connected more? Also, does anybody use the word glocal anymore? I remember that from a few years ago, and I quite liked it. Local and global. I thought it was really cute. And I think it should be continuing now. It's necessary. And one last question before we wrap up and do our special surprise event. There was a question from Gary about social media. Has it in many ways replaced the traditional marketing and press and relations? Have you found that? Simple answers would suffice now, but it has social media. Is it quite key?
In Australia, Aboriginal communities are the biggest unit. We're the biggest users of Facebook and social media. So it makes no sense anymore to spend huge wads of money on traditional media like print media and all of that kind of stuff. If you want to get Indigenous people to your work, you go on Facebook.
So it's much more person to person then, obviously.
Yeah.
Good. Yes, and so is the Instagram.
And Insta as well.
Yeah.
I myself use Twitter a lot, so whatever channels work. Anyway, so now thank you, Alice. Thank you, Anchi. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Dondon. It's now time to do this little special event that everybody's been waiting for. So what's happened is Taiwan Season 2020 Online Symposium Connecting with Taiwan has been given an award. And we're really pleased. Everybody in the team is really happy about this. Completely unexpectedly, we found out last night, and it's the Infallibles Award. And perhaps we should bring out first Amy Saunders, who is head of participant services at the Fringe, because Taiwan Season loves the Fringe in Edinburgh, and we feel very embraced, if I can speak on behalf of Taiwan Season, of the Fringe. So, Amy, do you have a few words to say, I believe?
Yes, thank you, Donald, and hello, everybody, and congratulations. I was thrilled when I heard that news last night, and funnily enough, we'd just been talking earlier in that day about the presence of Taiwan and the season this year, and how amazing Jae-Win and the whole team have been in terms of not just supporting their own artists, but also attending lots of other Fringe events and really feeling like they were bringing the spirit of the Fringe alive this month, I think, more than anybody else. So I absolutely agree that this award is very well deserved. And for Jae-Win and Iris and Donald and the whole team behind it and all the artists that have been involved, we've had panel talks and showcase sessions. You've really encompassed every element of trying to bring the live back to life. So it's been hugely appreciated from the Fringe point of view. And this would have been the 7th year that we would have celebrated your season, your artists with us. We hope that we will be able to celebrate them in the live next year. I know that Dance Space and Summer Hall and the other venues that look forward to hosting you every year will be looking forward to having you back. And I think that the tenacity and the passion and the innovation that you've shown this year in terms of turning everything online is something that we're all incredibly respectful of, and no doubt we will be living a hybrid between digital and live going forward. So if we can continue to use the digital to support the live, then I think you've done an amazing job, and congratulations to all of you.
And this might be a very good time to bring Stefania Ociccio from Draper Hall in London, who is the founder of the Infallibles Award, and also our UK producer, Jiwen Ye. Let's bring Jiwen on the screen. Stefania, my dear. Ciao.
Hello, Donald. So nice to finally talk to you. Ciao. So I've been following the Taiwan season, as you know, in years gone by. Was one of the linchpins of the Fringe, for sure. And this year, with the Infallibles jury, we were adamant that we were going to go ahead, plow. We watched every single show we found online under the Fringe umbrella. But I have to say that my jury, there's 7 of us altogether, a very, very international broad spectrum jury, we felt the need of starting a new category that did not exist in years gone by. So unanimously, we felt the need of recognizing efforts of the Taiwan season, not only because you managed to embrace and exploit the online platform so well, but because there was absolutely top level at every single event we watched, we created it. So I would like to thank everybody involved, and it is my pleasure to bestow the Infallible Award to the Taiwan Season Online Symposium 2020, Connecting with Taiwan, for all the 16 webinar and artist interviews that we saw across August.
Well, this might be a very good time to put Gwen on full screen. How about doing that backstage? Let's have Gwen on full screen to say a few words, Gwen, because you're the force behind this.
Well, thank you so much, Stefania, and I am so surprised and very pleased with this award. As you know, I was just going like, what? To be honest, I feel I am being connected with all the online programs which I have been involved, and including people who organized and from before August, as well as, you know, the Fringe has got a virtual festival and our own program. However, I have never thought about the Fringe Award are still around. So I suddenly feel like, oh my goodness me, people are actually, the judges are actually still around. And suddenly I feel like I'm in such a Edinburgh Festival Fringe spirit. So having said all this, to be honest, nothing would happen without my team. And there's a list of people that I would need to thank too. So first of all, I'd like to thank our Taiwan Season 2020 Edinburgh Festival Fringe artists, the 4 groups, and they are the key focus of Taiwan Season Festival Fringe. And they are Hong Zhong Lai from Hong Dance, Cheng-Hua from Incandescent Dance. Both of the productions will be featured would have been featured at Summer Hall, but they will be back next year. Nai Xuan Yang from the Petit Shows production, and Xiao Wei Lin from the Taiko Tales Dance Theatre. Both productions will be at Dance Space in 2021. And I also would like to thank our webinar key speakers and their guests. And they are Boehme Li, who presented the venues and the relationships in Taiwan. Li Chunyao, who represented the development of inclusive dance and disabled arts in Taiwan. River Lin, who did the international collaborations and translations of dance, performance, live arts, and of course our wonderful Cheng-Hua, who did the 2 beautiful Aborigine arts development and the international collaborations, which all of those are so valuable. And I think this title about connecting with Taiwan, it really is about that. It's about how we can bring what we have got in Taiwan and those beautiful resources we may not have a chance to talk about. We use this opportunity to feature that, to discuss that, and having a conversation about that. So hoping that Taiwan Season is a a virtual platform for further communication, although we can't be physically together now globally. And I also need to thank to our technical teams. We have a wonderful technical team, which is Modern Xingqiu Yingye, Modern Platter Productions, and they did our beautiful showcase and pitch at the Edinburgh Festival. And our Performance Arts Alliance, of course, who has been working really hard with us for the whole month of our symposium program. Very grateful, because all of those are new. We all have been holding our hands together, and then through it, the development of it, the learn about how we can make the best we can, and I think we have done it. And I'm most grateful for all the people who we have formed together and having this journey together. And of course, having said all of this, my left and the right hand person, Iris Lim and Donna Hutera, without those, I would not be able to deliver this at all, because they are my core team, and I valued very much for their tremendous efforts and support in deliver this program. And having also said this, we have been continuing having a discussion with Ed Fringe from May onwards about how are we going to do this, and they have been our sounding board as well for our Taiwan season online symposium. And to be honest, I feel we have a closer relationship with Ed Fringe Society than we had in the past 6 years that Taiwan season has been host our platform at the Edinburgh Fringe. Because in the past, what our most contact people at Ed Fringe would be our venues, of course, but the Edinburgh Festival Fringe Society has been in contact with the international showcase producers pretty soon after they announced the cancellation, but then they also acted very fast about this virtual program, but without just going ahead doing it themselves. They actually consulted with us as a whole, probably 15, 16 countries of international producers, which I feel bonded very closely with them and feel quite comfortable how we can deliver our online showcase and pitch. So yeah, it's kind of weird, isn't it, that we are not together, but I feel bond with Ed Fringe more this year than before. And finally, I would also like to thank our founder, Cultural Division, Taipei Representative Office in the UK, and Ministry of Culture. It's such a privilege to be able to curate and produce this work. And I feel very touched, to be honest, that they actually give me a free hand to run, to curate, to produce this year's program. I think there's a lot of trust in me, and I value that and value that, and I'm grateful. So now I don't know if our Director of Cultural Division, Taipei Representative Officer in the UK is at the backstage. If so, can we bring him up to the stage and say a few words, please? Hello, this is our Director of Cultural Division, Taipei Representative Office based in the UK, and Director Chen Bin-Chen. Thank you. And could you please say a few words? Thank you.
Thank you, Jiwen, and hello to everyone. I just want to say thank you to the Fringe, and thank you to all participants for Taiwan season 2020. Although because of the pandemic, so we have to convert all the physical events into kind of virtual version. However, I think Jiwen and her team really done a pretty wonderful work. And as the director of cultural division, I would like to say that the thing we are willing to do is to support our artists from Taiwan, and also try to promote, try to communicate with different territories in terms of different aspects of arts, to share our experience and the knowledge from Taiwan to different countries or different territories. And I believe that actually the Taiwanese season in the Fringe of this year could be a very good example what we have done and what we can really achieve. So I would like to send thank you to everyone for participating and also for supporting the Taiwan season this year in the Edinburgh Fringe. And that's it. So see you soon, and hope we can meet in kind of physical events, and also meet online for sharing more experiences. Thank you.
Well, that kind of wraps it up for today and for the entire month. It's been a remarkable journey, and I think also that I'm very pleased that everything's been recorded and documented for future reference, and because it's been such a rich vein of information, and very open to the rest of the world. I think we're citizens of the world here, and Taiwan claims its place in that. So I'm very pleased to be a part of this. Thank you, Stefania, for bestowing this award to Taiwan Season. Thank you, Amy, for continued support.
You're very welcome.
You're welcome as well, Donald, and we genuinely look forward to seeing you, as the director said, in the live, hopefully next August, but we'll certainly continue to work together.
And thank you, Director Chen.
Yeah, definitely we will support Edinburgh Fringe strongly and continuingly. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Go ahead, Amy.
I agree with Jaywin that this has been an interesting experiment, that, as she said, even though we haven't been together in the live, it feels like the connection is stronger. So it's been a wonderful positive to come out of it.
And Jiwen, if I had a hat on, I would take it off to you right now. Yeah. So my invisible hat, I take off to you. And I think we should wrap up. And audience, thank you, audience, for being here. Spread the word about culture and the need for it, and how wonderful it is, and art making and creativity, and about Taiwan. Please feel free to share this good news about the Infallibles Award that Taiwan Season has received. And see you all next year. And do be in touch with Taiwan Season if you want to know more about what's going on there and about the artists involved.
Before we go, can we bring our live crew onto it, and we're going to toast together? So can we have our tech team and everyone in Taiwan? I don't know if we can have in Australia our speakers as well. Can we have a toast? Cheers! Harry?
Well done.
Okay, are we taking a photo? Okay, cheers.
不要拍，
有拍吗？3 seconds, 3, 2, okay, cheers. Everyone, thank you, the audience, for being with us all period. And some of them have been following us from the beginning to the end of a session which I am really touched. And hopefully everyone see you in 2021 Fringe, Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.